All right, I think we'll get started now. We're just coming up on time here. So welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us in our fourth day of Donor Experience Week. I can't believe it's already on the fourth day. My name is Mel Bilko. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm Keela's head of community engagement. We also have the lovely Samantha Lego on the back end of things, answering all of your technical questions. And before we begin, I just wanted to start this session today by acknowledging that here in Vancouver, we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and also the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and give thanks for their generosity and hospitality on these lands and waters. We're very excited to be able to facilitate 10 sessions and 5 lunch and learns for you all. This wouldn't be possible without all the help of our amazing speakers who have agreed to volunteer their time, as well as to our sponsors, which one of them is the Good Partnership, might I add. We also have Imagine Canada and Pano as our sponsors as well, and we thank all of them. And just a reminder that all of these sessions will be recorded, and you will receive both the slide decks as well as the recordings after the conference is over. All right, now with that all out of the way, I'd love to introduce our very lovely speaker for this session today, Cindy Wegman. We have had the absolute privilege to be able to work extremely close with Cindy and the Good Partnership over the last year, and I'm super excited to have her present yet another session with us all today. Cindy is the president and the CEO at the Good Partnership and sees fundraising as a tool for change. With a degree in women's studies from Queen's University, an MBA from the Rotman School at the University of Toronto, and over 15 years of fundraising experience, she started the Good Partnership to empower small nonprofits to have more fundraising success so that they could fund their important work. Cindy's session today, titled From Good Intentions to Getting It Done, as you can see in the slide, will help you discover some secrets to hack your time and prioritize that donor experience once and for all. And we encourage you to pop your questions into the Q&A and chat box as usual. If you'd like everyone to see your questions, please make sure that you've selected all panelists and attendees. And with that, I will pass it off to you, Cindy, and let you take it from here.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to share my screen here with all of you. It's so nice to see everyone. I was able to participate in this last year. We love Keela. And so it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Let me just find so I'm going to get started, and I do encourage participation. So you've already been phenomenal at introducing yourselves. Thank you, everyone. If you haven't introduced yourselves yet, please go ahead and do so in the chat. I love seeing everyone. I also see some familiar names, so it's great to see you all here. Let's just start by acknowledging that the world is a mess right now. There's endless jokes about 2020. And I will acknowledge, the incredible privilege that I have. I feel very lucky that 4 days a week, every morning, I was able to drive 20 minutes with my kids in the car, take them to my parents' house while I sat tucked in the basement doing my work. At least my kids were being taught by my mom. They got to do outdoor activities. And we were really, really lucky to have that support. But regardless of what your life is like right now, it's hard. It's hard with all the things happening in the world, especially with the anti-Black racism work that's happening. Certainly a lot of stuff going on with the upcoming elections in the United States, forest fires, et cetera, et cetera. So it's difficult, and it's difficult to work in this climate. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, but it's something we often don't talk enough about. And we have all these sort of tangible distractions like COVID and forest fires and elections, but inside of us, that translates to things like stress and anxiety and not sleeping. And that also makes it really hard to just get through day to day. So I want to start by acknowledging that, because a lot of that is sort of foundational to the stuff I want to talk about. But as I move forward, I'm curious in the chat, what is stressing you out these days? What's preventing you from focusing on doing the work you need to do? And let me tell you why all of this is relevant. All right. In the best of times, even like pre-COVID, which, isn't even necessarily the best of times, but, when we look at when things are sort of quote unquote normal, we're actually really not that good at working. We're not productive. We have bad work habits. And now with COVID, with the 2020 apocalypse, things are even worse. And if we don't find a way to improve how we work, like how we actually spend our time, we're going to burn ourselves out if we're not already there. Or if we are burnt out, we're going to burn ourselves out to a point where there's no coming back, which none of us want and doesn't serve our cause, right? Doesn't serve our mission. We can't fulfill the needs of our communities if we can't even get through the day, right? So that is why I think it's so important to talk about these things. And in my experience, I love learning. I have a big commitment to lifelong learning, but I'd often go to conferences or online conferences, and I'd get like really inspired with all the information, and then I take it back to my day-to-day, and I actually wouldn't implement anything. Have any of you, let me know if that's your experience. Just say yes or no in the chat, where, you love getting all this insight, and, this week you have amazing speakers. Yeah. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then it's like, whew, I get back the next day, and it's really hard to make things happen. So that's what we're going to focus on in our time together. You and me. We're going to talk about how to take these amazing ideas and actually turn them into action by changing the way we work. And hopefully part of that is also preserving our own self-care a little bit. All right. So excellent. I'm getting lots of yeses. I love it. Let me tell you what we're going to cover today. First thing, we're going to talk about how to prioritize, which is actually really important because oftentimes we find ourselves spending time on the wrong things because we haven't taken the time to really understand what needs our attention and focus and energy. And sometimes we default. We work a lot in a state of inertia generally. I'm not going to talk too much about how our brain functions. It's something I do talk about at other times. And really that means we just do the things that we're used to doing, and it's really hard to make time for the important or bigger things or things we want to try that are new or different. So we're going to talk about how to think about and prioritize. We're going to talk about the habits you need to develop to work more efficiently and effectively, because again, we work on inertia, so we need to develop habits that become like second nature. And then finally, we're going to talk about how do you master change. So how do you go from making these commitments to doing new things to actually seeing that through? And that's the hard part. So let me know if that sounds good in the chat. Let me know if, just say ready. And yeah, Peter, being used to going at top speed for everything, lots of events, to now being isolated. Yeah, amazing. Let's go. Yay, Stephanie. We all need this. Okay, I love it. Thanks, everyone. I love the participation. All right. So much of our day-to-day work in the nonprofit sector is not actually helping you move towards your goals, right? As I said, a lot of it is just inertia and making sure we're doing the things that keep us moving one step in front of the other. But it's really hard to find the time and space to do the things that we want to do or the things we don't want to do, but we know are important. And so it just feels like there's never any time, right? So what I want you, and like in my experience in the sector, we always find ways to like work on all these little things that take up so much time that actually don't lead to significant growth or progress. So for example, email is one of those things we spend a lot of time doing, that is important, but it's not always as time sensitive as we think it is. And there's ways to contain that. So I'm going to talk about that and other things. So the first thing is you need to evaluate what is actually important. Okay, if you want to create time for some of the important work, you have to know what that is, and you have to be able to offload some of what's not important. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to figure that out. So I don't know, some of you might have seen this before. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. It was used by US President Dwight Eisenhower. And really it's a way to think about like categorizing the things that we work on every day. So I'm going to just walk you through the quadrants here. The first one is do now. So these are the urgent and important things. So urgent means it's time sensitive, and important means that it's high value. Okay, so these are the things that are like, we have to do. Like the roof is on fire, we have to put it out. Does anyone have examples of things that are due now? Things that just have to get done? You can put them in the chat. They're high value and time sensitive. Grants, yes. Grant reports, paying bills. Paying bills and timesheets, I would say they're important, but not in the sense that they're adding like huge value. Those are more administrative tasks. But yeah, all these things, donor thank yous, signing leases, confirming matching gifts, exactly. So these are the things that are non-negotiable. But what I want, you need to keep track of those and you need to be doing them all the time. But then there's the schedule. And this is where I feel like most people really get stuck. Okay, this is the tough one. These are the things that are not due quite yet and maybe don't even have a deadline, but they're the things that we know are important, but not time sensitive. So does anyone have any examples of something that they should schedule, but they just never get around to doing? They know it's important. One-on-ones, yes. Data cleanup, absolutely. These are one-on-ones. Liz is like, I feel like a broken record when I tell organizations to go meet with their donors, and people never do it. They never do it. Donor retention, looking for new partners, sometimes research, trying new, like developing new ideas, taking things from conferences and turning it into action, new events, connecting with staff. All these things are really good examples of like it's sort of on our perpetual to-do list, right? We know we want to do it and we just never get around to doing it. So the delegate one is funny because I just don't love using the term delegate. I work with mostly small organizations and usually there's no one to delegate to. So what I actually call this one batch, and we're going to talk about how you can batch your work so that it takes up less time. Liz is joking, you need to schedule a bathroom break. I actually had to start doing that with my lunch because my days would get completely filled up. And yes, that's important. And it's important to get up and move. I saw somewhere, part of our stress is just being in the same space forever, and like getting fresh air, all that kind of stuff. So for delegate and batch, these are the things that we cannot change. So to me, these are things like payroll, data entry, they have to get done. They're important, but sometimes they're not always the best use of our time, or they can creep into a whole lot of our time if we don't manage it well. So usually, as I said, this is called delegate, and we're not going to talk about delegating today because that's just not most people's realities. So we're going to talk about batching. Okay. And I'll talk to you about what that means in a few minutes. So the last quadrant is eliminate. And these are things that are not time sensitive and actually not important. And this also is really hard because we are very reluctant to eliminate things. Can anyone think of something that they're doing now that no one should be doing, that you should really just drop it? That's a harder one. I know. I'll give you an example. We checking Slack so often. One of my favorite examples is social media. Now, I'm not saying personal social media, I find that with organizations, oftentimes there'll be this feeling like we need to be on all the social media channels, and we spend all this time managing our social media channels, but maybe you only have engagement on one or two. But we're so afraid to let go of the others because what if one day we actually increase our following there? But maybe you can dump a couple of them and just let it go and focus on the ones that are performing. Doug, reading all of your newsletter subscriptions. Yes, I'm going through the week right now trying to unsubscribe to all the things that I don't actually read. And so those are really really good. Liz said they stopped sending some reports and no one noticed, right? Sometimes we do things just because we think it's expected, and you can try to stop and see if anyone notices, or you can actually ask and say, is this of value, or can we find a different way or something? So yeah, these are great examples. I don't see the questions. So Mel, I only see, now I lost my chat.
There
box.
is one question that came in.
Yeah.
Would you like me to read it out to you?
Please.
What are your thoughts on tracking time and reviewing it weekly, monthly, quarterly, in broader terms? And what would the categories for nonprofit executives be so we're not in the weeds of tracking? Does this go into an email category or a board category?
Okay, let me try answer. I might can't read. I don't know where my, hold on, let me just see if I can pull open my, because I like to see it, but my computer is hiding the stuff from me. Okay, so time tracking, first of all, from a workplace perspective, like keeping track of time for accountability, I'm not a huge fan of. I think people don't need that kind of monitoring, but there's a saying that I'm gonna not remember well. I found my little thing here, which is, if you track something or measure something, you're more likely to change it. That's a butchering of the thing, but that we have to, if we want to change our time, we have to be able to track it and know where it's going in order to make that change. It's like anything. If you have a baseline, you know when you're making progress. If you don't know what the baseline is, you don't know when you're making progress, and you're not motivated to actually do it. So we sometimes use Toggle, T-O-G-G-L, I don't think there's an E, for tracking time. It's just like a start stop. You can use it and create categories. Sometimes you can do like specific projects that you're working on. Sometimes you can even just write down what quadrant you're working in, so you can track more like high level how you're spending your time. So what would be those categories? Like I said, I would probably start with the ones that are taking up the most of your time. So if it is email or something like that, or board, but otherwise you could do the high level categories of the Eisenhower Matrix, and maybe just give examples of what that means. I hope that answers your question. Perfect. Okay. Oops. Yeah, so there's lots of great tools to track time. And those are some good examples of things we can let go. All right. So now you know how this looks. The key is, how do we make time for this not urgent schedule thing? And how do we manage the rest of it so that, for example, in this category, things don't actually take up 90% of our time? All right. Yeah. So most people, they look at this and they say, okay, that makes sense, but how do I actually make this happen? Right? Okay. So I can start to see how my time is spent in these different categories. What am I going to do to change it? And that's really where habits come in. So you need to develop and change some of your habits to be able to take the time that you have, because we all have a limited number of time, like a limited amount of time, and it feels less and less these days. How do we use that in the most productive way? Okay, so I'm going to talk about blocking your time, because to me, this is one of the best ways to start to manage your calendar. And I understand and acknowledge sometimes in the nonprofit sector or any sector, it feels like our time is not our own. Sometimes it feels like, we just have all these different priorities, and people are booking our time, and it's really hard. So I want you to start by actually putting in your calendar. If you use a paper calendar or a digital calendar, I want you to block off sections of your day to do work, to actually do the work that you need to get done. If that makes sense. And let me show you a couple examples. The first thing is important work. Right? So that's that category that we've talked about with things that are important but get put to the side all the time, like conference learnings. I want you to try find 5 hours a week to block in your calendar to focus on that important work. Okay? So for me, I like to work best in the mornings, but find your productive time and just block it off to do these things. Don't let the only exception is like if a donor wants to meet during that time, maybe, but that's 1 hour, not 5. So start by consistently building into your calendar time that no one else can book. Okay. And then I want you to focus and turn off distractions. One of my favorite things is like a permanent out of office. I don't have it anymore, but when we started working, and my team has this, which is an auto reply on their emails that says, I got your email, but I don't check emails all day. I usually check once or twice a day. So if it's urgent, just call me on my cell phone. And I can't tell you, I literally have had no one call on my cell phone, but it manages people's expectations around getting back to them about emails so that you are not spending all day, every day in and out of emails. Okay. So let me tell you. So yeah, first thing is turn off distractions, focus on one thing. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So let me come in here. So this is us. We are here. We are stranded on this little island, and we are trying to get over to this mainland. And the way we work, typically, when we multitask, which is what most of us do, is we say, okay, I'm going to start to build a bridge. Okay, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to build these pieces of bridge. Oh, but wait, I see these, like I see broken down ship over here. So maybe I'm going to come and try repair. This is a terrible boat. I'm going to try fix up this boat, and maybe I can actually just sail across. And then I get tired of doing that, or, the waves calm down for a bit and I say, oh, well, if I practice my swimming enough, I can actually start swimming. So I, practice a little bit, then I go a little bit farther and come back, and I'm building myself up to swim. But at the end of the day, with all this multitasking and all of this working really hard on all these things, I've literally made no progress. I am still right here. And that's how most of us work. Okay. And there's a great chart called Explain What's Happening. Because not just that we're working on multiple things, but that we actually are losing real time when we try to do multiple things. So this is called context switching. And it is what happens to our brains, like actual time in our like real time, but this is what happens when we switch between things. So if I'm focused on one thing, I have 100% of my mental capacity focused on that. And maybe you've experienced this where you get into the flow or the zone of work and you just become super productive because that's all you're focused on, and your brain can sort of, you put on these blinders and you just focus and move forward. But all of a sudden, if I add a second thing, my brain is switching back and forth and I lose 20% of my real time to nothing, like poof, gone. Okay. And then I only have 40% of time on each of these projects. And so I'm not even like making as much progress on those projects. This is called context switching. Dana. So yeah, and you can Google that. If you add a third thing here, we're losing 40% of our time. And you can see the trend. When we get to 5 things, we are only spending 5% of our time on any of those projects. And so it's going to take us, if this took us 1 week, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do the math in my head. It's going to take us 20 weeks to do it if we're working this way. Did I do the math right? I don't know, 5%, 100%. I think so. That's pretty staggering. Okay. So here's what it looks like when we focus. Okay. We're coming back here. Ooh, where's my little, nope. My little, here, make a big, it doesn't like what's happening on my screen. All right, here we are. I'm going to focus on the bridge, and I am just going to build this bridge. And look at that. In 1 week, I'm across. And I no longer have to worry about being stranded here with no supplies. And guess what? Maybe I want to come back and spend some time fixing up that sailboat because actually I really like it and I want to travel around and explore. Or I'm going to focus on my swimming because that's what I want to do, but maybe I don't even need to know how to swim anymore. So this is what happens when we focus our priorities and really work without a million tabs open and all that. So if there's one thing you can do, try turn off all your distractions for 40 minutes to 60 minutes and don't do anything else except that one thing. Okay? And see how that goes. And if you can do that for 5 hours a week, imagine how you can start crossing off those priorities. The right priorities, that is a really good one. I don't have time to go into that so much today because I literally do whole workshops on that. But remind me at the end, and if we have time, I'll talk a little bit about that because I think it's an important point. All right, let me come back here. All right. So this looks good, right? Everyone feel like they can, that this makes sense? Give me a yes or I can't see the thumbs up, but yes, if this is making sense, right? You can see how this might help you. I'm not saying you have to do this 100% of your time, 5 hours a week to start. And I think, I apologize, Dana. So you do this already, but sometimes you end up doing other things. I think that's a great insight. So I would start by focusing. If you can't even do 5 hours, do 1 or 2 hours. Sometimes it's just piecing it into chunks to build the habit, which we're going to talk about. And I would definitely say, for how do you get the organization to respect this non-distraction time? I would, it depends. It depends on your work environment. Sometimes you can put like a little sign up. Headphones sometimes works well. Make sure you block it in your calendar and people know, like I put in caps, do not book, like whatever. But the best thing that you could possibly do is try implement an organization-wide quiet hour where everyone is working in this way. That's like the gold standard. So 5 hours of focused in total. You should probably also look at blocking some time for like those menial tasks, like managing your email, so that that doesn't creep into all the other times. Okay, I see there's a question, but okay, here we go. Okay, I answered that. Perfect. So again, easier said than done, right? Oh, Mel says at Keela, they have a no meeting Wednesday and it's amazing. So yeah, I love that. So yeah, the more you can get this to be part of your institutional culture, the easier it will be. And the more your organization will be able to accomplish as a whole, which that's where this really gets exciting. All right. So yes, easier said than done, right? Now we know a little bit on how to prioritize, or where we need to understand, like, what are the things that we need to do in this time that we block off. We're blocking off the time and we know how to do it effectively, but it doesn't mean it's easy. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we could just change the things we don't like about how we work? And just like snap our fingers and that's it, or like any bad habits, right? Wouldn't it be lovely if we could just, will them away? But that's not how things work. So I want to talk a little bit about change and how our brain works and how we can leverage that to actually make these things last for us. So we're going to do like a really, really, really intro to a little bit of neuroscience. So basically 90 to 95% of our brain's decisions are unconscious, which means we aren't even aware that our brains are making decisions, let alone what those decisions are. But they're happening. Our brain is very busy working in the background. Which way am I going to look? What am I going to pick up? Etc. There's like literally all these micro decisions firing off in our brains. And so what happens is our brains are designed to make those decisions easy. Make it so that we don't have to work as hard or spend all this energy, mental energy, on things that might not be so important. Okay, so let me give you an example. I love this example because it's happened to me so many times. All right. This pre-COVID, when we used to drive to work or go on the subway to work, you have your first day of the job and you're really paying attention to that route that you go, your commute. Okay, so if you're driving, you're aware, you have the GPS on, you're looking at the signs, you're aware of all the landmarks and like things you're driving past, and it's creating a lot of work in your brain to just take that route. But then after about a month on the job, you start spending almost no mental energy on that route, okay? Your neurological pathway in your brain has now shortcutted, okay? So it just that route becomes easy. You might be able to even fall asleep. If anyone is in a city or a town that has transit, I used to be able to fall asleep on the subway and wake up at my stop, just because your brain kind of like knows that that's going on. But then, have you ever, and I want you to tell me if this has happened to you like it's happened to me, have you ever tried to go somewhere in the vicinity of work, but you end up at your office because that's the shortcut, that's what you're so used to? Yeah, right? I got a hell yeah from Peter. Anyone else? Like all the time. He did that yesterday. Amazing. Okay, so I don't feel so bad. None of us should feel bad because this is literally how our brains are designed. It is designed to make it easy for us to get through the day and not have to think about all these decisions. Okay? But that starts to work against us when we want to change things. And that's why change is so hard. So when we start to say, okay, like we actually need to create a new pathway in our brain, we have to work on it. And what happens is at first, it might be easy to adapt a new habit, but after a little bit of like feeling good about it, our brains start fighting back and they're like, wait a second, this is not the route we agreed upon. We're going back to the old way, my friend, because that was easier for me. And so as we start to try and adopt new habits, it actually becomes harder to keep them until we get to a point of around 21 days of consistently changing that habit. And at that point, both pathways are about equally dominant in our mind. For the new pathway to be dominant, it takes about 70 days. I think about 69, but approximately 70 days. So we need to focus on building these habits long enough that they become the shortcuts in our brain, that they become something that we just don't have to worry about. Now imagine if you can get to a point where you don't have to worry about doing all the things that you've been putting off or that you haven't had time for, that you have time for. New habits by the holidays. Thank you, Melanie. That's awesome. That is the time we have right now. And it's hard to build new habits when so much around us is changing, which it is still changing very rapidly. But that's why carving out that time and really focusing allows you to sort of get into that habit even faster. Okay. There's like so much research on behavior change. I don't have time to do all of it or to share all of it. But I want to share with you my favorite hack to sticking with these goals, to sticking with these changes. Okay. So what does this look like in practice? Have you ever told yourself you're going to do something, but then don't do it? I want to know what that is for you in the chat. For me, I have a sweet tooth. I love sweets. So for me, it is like, I'm not going to, especially COVID, here's my COVID confession. At the end of a long day, I have two school-age kids. So at the end of the long day, after we put them to bed, if I'm feeling stressed and exhausted, my husband and I will Uber in 2 pints of ice cream, one for each of us, and we will eat them in bed, the full thing in one sitting. Okay. And if it was just me saying, you know what, you don't need that ice cream, don't go for it, then like I probably would have lost 50 pounds during COVID. But the reality is it's not enough to tell ourselves something. We are really bad at keeping promises to ourselves. Getting up earlier, I said that I thank you everyone for your awesome comments right now. Postpone, long to-do lists, working out. And right now working out is really important. Physical health is really, really valuable to your mental health. Homework, yeah, lots of people, everyone has a hard time working out. Folding your laundry, yes, Amanda. So all of these things, we all have things that if we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, and we don't do it. And that is the reality for most people. If you're not like that, give me a call and I will learn from your wisdom. So if we tell someone else we're going to do it, there's a 65% chance that we'll actually follow through. So if I say, I can't trust my husband with the ice cream thing because he's an accomplice, but if I say to my sister, I'm going to text you at 9 o'clock and I'm going to let you know, or I'm going to text you and tell you that I didn't have that pint of ice cream, there's a 65% chance that I will not have that ice cream, or that I will follow through with my commitment. Accountability has a really strange effect on us. It's actually one of the neurological shortcuts that happens when we have this. It's like almost like saving face, where we don't want to let other people down. We're terrible. We let ourselves down all the time, but we're really, really, really don't want to let other people down. But if you add a deadline to it, there's a 95% chance that you will stick with it. Okay, so what I want you to do is find an accountability buddy, whether it's in your organization or just a friend in the sector, and start to check in maybe weekly and say, okay, what are your big priorities? Like, and don't pick like 10 priorities. I'm talking like 1 to 3 things a week, big things a week that are important that you need to do, and check in on each other and say, okay, on Friday at noon, I'm going to send you an email, and I want to know how you're doing with it. And there's a much, much, much greater chance that we will actually be successful in getting that done. Okay, so accountability buddies are my number one hack for moving forward. All right, we are just about at time. I want to share with you great opportunity. We've partnered with Keela, and they have sponsored a scholarship in our online fundraising training program called Flipside Fundraising. You can see the link in the slides, and I know, I think someone will put it in the chat in a second, but this is it's a very quick scholarship application, like shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. We didn't want to make it complicated for you because I know you have a lot. But if you're interested, if you're a small organization and you are really interested in figuring out how to change some of the deeper things that we don't usually teach around fundraising, so mindset, habits, really the foundations that we don't usually teach in our sector, then Flipside Fundraising is for you. We also I take you through the steps to develop a fundraising plan for your organization, including tons of templates and cheat sheets and workflows and examples. Doug, there are not CFRE credits. If there's enough interest, I can certainly apply for them, but most organizations don't have that are in Flipside don't have dedicated fundraisers, and so they're not applying for their CFRE, so we haven't prioritized it. But it's certainly, I've taught CFRE credited stuff before, and it's an option. So you can reach out to me. But in the meantime, apply for a scholarship because it's free, and there's no there's no obligation. But if you really want to shift the foundations of how you approach fundraising, this is the program for you. So yeah, scholarships are open until October 9th. With that, I am happy to take questions either in the Q&A or in the chat. I do want to go back to the one around how to prioritize, or like, how do you know what to prioritize? I can't remember who mentioned that. But yeah, I'll talk about that for a minute while everyone has a chance. All right, so in terms of how to prioritize, again, I could talk a lot about this, and Flipside Fundraising definitely is for you if that's a question. So most of the time, we're really good at looking at other organizations from the outside and saying like, oh, they're doing this, we should do that. And oftentimes, like, our fundraising ideas or the things that we want to try come from just comparing ourselves to other organizations. But the reality is we don't necessarily know that those are going to work for us. So the biggest thing I recommend for anyone and everyone is, if you don't know your donors, whether they're corporate, individual, foundations, but if you don't know them, you need to get to know them, because your fundraising strategies and tactics all need to be aligned with where your organization is today. So that's understanding your donor base, engaging with them, getting to know them, and creating a fundraising program that fits. And also is aligned with your mission and values and staff and all of that. So that is the biggest thing. There's no magic wand in fundraising. I wish there was. So there's never a right answer. There really is no perfect thing to say, okay, this is your focus. This is what you should be trying. But the way I describe it is like, you need the ability to make good decisions. And to make good decisions, you need good data. And oftentimes the data that we're looking at is what we see other organizations do. And so the most important data is to understand who's in your organization's network. Why do your donors care about the work you're doing? What do they feel when they give to you? Those are the things that help you figure out opportunities to grow your support, grow your fundraising, grow your community in a way that fits with your mission and your organization. So I hope that answers that question. Please go ahead and keep them coming. Abigail asked, do you have any suggestions for apps or websites that can help with planning and blocking time? So start with your calendar. I use Google. We use G Suite. Some people, so it's a whole other conversation about G Suite versus Office 365. But for the most part, whatever you use for your calendar, or if it's handwritten, block the time. That is the most important thing. What I use, if other people want to book my time, I use Acuity. There's also Calendly, and I set parameters around how people can access my calendar, and then I don't have to go back and forth. So for example, if you were to go to our website and you wanted to book a free consultation, it would take you to our Acuity page where you can book a free consultation. It shows you my calendar availability. But what you don't see, and what I've set it up to do, is you will only see Tuesdays and Thursdays, because those are the times where I set myself up to do back-to-back consultations. In fact, I think I have a bunch this afternoon. And I get in the zone, and then that's all I focus on. So they end up stacking each other and blocking by default. Same thing with podcast recordings. I have a podcast, a small nonprofit. If you haven't heard of it, you should go check it out. Shameless plug. But when I book guests for our podcast, I just send them an Acuity link, and they only see availability on Thursdays, because that is my podcasting day. No one, under any circumstance, has access to my Friday afternoons. Those are the times when I need to wrap up my week and finish up my priorities. And so I use that. But really, your calendar is your best friend. All right. So someone anonymous asked, is Flipside Fundraising to work on as an organization level or personal? To be honest, both. If you get the scholarship or if you register, but it is for your whole organization. I encourage you to share the login information with everyone in your organization. I am a firm believer that the information we teach in Flipside is relevant to everyone, not just people who wear the fundraising hat in their organization. So yeah, if you win the scholarship, it's for your whole organization. You can all participate. Your board members are welcome to join. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I think we only have about, we need to wrap things up. So the podcast is The Small Nonprofit. It is, right here, depending on where you listen to your podcasts. We run it in partnership with Charity Village. So you can get information about it there, but it's also on our website, or if you do thesmallnonprofit.com, it takes you to that part of our website. And yes, thanks, Mel. We think it's good too. I enjoy it. We have good conversations, sometimes tough ones. Awesome. Thanks, Vicky. Amazing. I think I know the team wants to get set up for the next session, which is with Brady from Next After, right? Which is going to be awesome.
Oh, sorry, my volume is not working there. Yes, we have Brady up next. We're super excited. I'm just going to share my screen here so you can all see. Yes, we have Brady Josephson. I think Sam's going to plop it into the chat box there to register for our next session, which is in about 10 minutes or so. First of all, thank you so much, Cindy. That was incredible. We were actually just in our Slack channels at Keela just saying how you should be coaching our team right now on how to prioritize tasks. So I'll be hitting you up with some more tips. But yeah, before we do sign off, just a couple of things. When this session is over, there'll be a pop-up that appears, just a quick survey for you to fill out. I'm sure Cindy would love to hear your feedback. We always love to. We want to improve this conference as much as possible. So please do us a favor and do that. And I think that's all I needed to say. Oh yes, these sessions will be recorded, so you'll receive the recording along with the slide deck by the end of this week when the conference is done. And yeah, we have to rush off now to let Brady into the next session. So we'll hopefully see you all there. Cindy, thank you again so much. I don't know if you had any final words, but it has been always a pleasure working with you. And we'll hope to see you again soon.
Likewise, thank you everyone for showing up. I mean, just that is the first step, right? So keep going, build some momentum. I know you can do it, and be gentle with yourself too. These are difficult times.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. We'll see you soon.